Hi, welcome to Eat It with James Eade. Um, this is a show about being able to recover from addiction of all forms. And if you want to see this episode or other episodes and previous shows, please go to airu.tv. It's scrolling across the bottom of your screen. And this show is dedicated to answering questions from the viewing audience. And if I can change the scroll, you can write to us at info@airu.tv, and maybe we'll take your question. And basically, I want to be a source of to share my experience, my strength, and my hope that everyone can recover. All human beings have the power and potential to recover from addiction. And I'm an author, and I'm best known for Just for Dummies. But I have written a book about recovery too. It's called Freedom: Your Path to Recovery. And I've written a second book. It's just come out this year, No Blame, No Shame. And the combination of books has given me this title of Author of the Year for 2025 by the top industry professionals. At least that's what they say. Not that I think that I'm the best author in the world, but I think the message of recovery needs to be out there. So what I'm going to do is bring Rick Rosner onto the show. Hi, Rick. Good morning. You're recovering from COVID, or are you still suffering?
This is day 13, and my little line on the test is less pink than it was yesterday. So I feel like I tested negative a couple days after Paxlovid, and then sometimes it bounces back, which it did. But I think I'm getting ready to be done with it altogether, I hope. But
Okay.
I'm pretty unkempt and disorganized and sleeping a lot.
Got it. So let's answer a question from the
All right. How about from Janet Hernandez from Arvada, Colorado, who says, this is a trivial problem, but can you talk about tipping? I feel like it's never enough. And then I also feel like I'm a sucker.
Okay.
And yet tipping has gotten really, well, since COVID, I feel like it's gotten more pervasive, more complicated, and so all right. Let's talk about frickin' COVID. So many businesses, the whole country shut down, which was itself like a source of anger for conservatives, that they said the country didn't need to shut down. On the other hand, COVID has killed like 1.25 million Americans. So how many would have died if we didn't shut down? But with everything shut down, like businesses were barely getting by, and you felt like, you had to tip your ass off to help people get by in 2020. And that feeling hasn't, for me at least, hasn't entirely gone away.
Yeah, the restaurant business was severely hurt. People weren't going out to eat for obvious reasons. And of course, the people that were servers and waiters and that sort of thing, bartenders even, they survived a lot by tips. And so all their source of income was gone. And these were people that weren't making a lot of, often, at least the ones that I know, were working 2 jobs to get by. And so, when we started to recover, at least nominally, so that businesses could reopen and people felt comfortable going out to eat again, you did feel this obligation to be extra thoughtful in giving the tips because you knew that they were struggling. And when I went back to what it was, my wife and I, we used to have Friday date day. We'd go to lunch at the same restaurant. And all the waiters knew us, and they gave us the same table, and they knew what we wanted to eat, and all that kind of stuff. And so we would tip them generously, anyways, because we were getting special attention. And one of the things that I do now is I go to a Pete's Coffee, which is local here. Maybe everybody else knows Starbucks, and the barista, the person who serves the coffee, I tip them as well. And, it's like, it's not the same kind of level of service. It's not the same kind of
So here's the competing thing. On the one hand, you feel like a sucker. Like there's a place where I go to buy a bag of salmon belly fish.
Right.
And so I take it off the shelf. I walk it over to the cash register or whatever they call it now. And she rings it up and it's like, do you want to leave a tip? And it's like, well, no, this was a normal transaction. At the same time, who am I to deny this lady who the store I go into where you buy the salmon, it's always empty. So like, I don't know how many customers she even serves in a day. Who am I to deny her a buck? And either way, you feel like, I don't know, I should just quit thinking about it, throw in the buck all the time. I can afford it. And where else can you feel like a generous person for a buck? At the same time, you feel like a sucker. And my situation's a little more complicated because I used to work for a famous, very generous person who would take us out to many meals. They were work meals often. And, the tab for, some of our work took us to Vegas. And we'd eat in a fancy, casino restaurant. There'd be 20 people and the tab was, at least $2,000. And, our boss would probably tip 50% on that. And because A, generous guy, B, he's in a position to be able to, and, so, when I'm thinking about, do I add another $2 to this tip? I'm thinking of, my boss who wouldn't think anything, or he probably thought of it eventually, when the credit card bills came due at the end of the month. He probably, but in the moment, he thought nothing of tipping $1,000 perhaps.
Yeah. And, there's when I work with some people, we go to a bistro and so the woman that's behind the counter most of the time has become very familiar with me and what I'm doing there, working with others. And so she's always bringing me the cranberry juice that I would normally order and taking the order from the other person. And, so I tip her and I tip her a couple bucks and she lights up. It's like the nicest thing I could do for her was just to recognize, but it's not transactional. It's, personal. She knows who I am and what I'm doing, and she approves, and she's delighted that I'm, and I don't think it's a very busy place, so I think the extra $2 seems to matter. And it doesn't change her life. It doesn't change my life. But for a brief moment in time, we're both a little bit happier.
All right. So I've noticed I have a habit, and it's kind of a bad habit or not, where my first thought is to do the wrong thing. And then it takes me like 30 seconds or a minute to go, all right, no, that sucked. I got to do the right thing. Fortunately, it's mostly with tipping, where I was at a wedding, maybe where I got the COVID, and the guy made me a Virgin Mary, and really all I want is this Virgin Mary mix in a glass, and just give it over ice. But a professional bartender, he has to add the slice of lemon, the slice of lime, the olives on it. It's a whole thing.
Yeah.
And I tip him $1 and I walk away and I'm like, no, that was more than $1's worth of labor. And then I look and do I have any other singles? No. And now I have to wrestle with myself. And it's like, because the next smallest bill I have is a $5. I'm like, all right, look, you're at a wedding. The food is free. The drinks are free. And so I go back and I stuff the $5 into the tip jar. And that happens to me, not infrequently. I do the wrong thing. And then I'm like, okay, come on, asshole, don't be a dick.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Well, this kind of thinking is very normal for me is like, my first thought. People say trust your first thought, but for someone like myself, my first thought is often wrong. And so what I think of is a lot of times I have these built-in defense mechanisms and built-in kind of survival mechanisms that I learned as a child. And so what I try to do is be a grown-up, and I'm pretending to be a grown-up, but all of a sudden I kick in, my frontal lobes start working rather than my nervous system. My nervous system could drive behavior that I don't really approve of in hindsight. So, when I'm thoughtful and making a conscious choice instead of just my instinctive, reactive choice, I seem to make better decisions, and I seem to make people around me happier, which makes me happier. And it just seems to be a better way to be. But I can't say that my first instinct is a good one,
Yeah, no,
because,
and me either.
yeah,
Though I've been thoroughly shrunk. I was sent to my first psychiatrist when I was 6 years old because my parents went out of town. They left me with an old lady babysitter who scared the crap out of me. And when they came back from this trip, I was spinning in circles and chanting to God, which is disturbing in a 6-year-old. And if you count couples counselors and everything, I've been to at least 6 shrinks in my life and plus I've tried to write my autobiography for decades. So I'm fairly, I understand myself fairly well. I'm fairly transparent to myself. Not everybody is. There's a wide range of self-understanding
of
among
course, it's a
people.
spectrum. Yes, just like
And
most
my
things.
wife is less transparent to herself. And my wife is, mostly a good person, but she's got some areas where, like, if I call her on something, she's immediately like, or she's very defensive, and
Yeah,
she'll come back with something, which is not the way um, I shouldn't be playing gotcha with my wife, but if it's something that annoys me and it's legit, I should be able to say it. And we've been in couples counseling for freaking forever, not because we're always yelling at each other, but because I'm lucky enough to have great insurance that pays for it. But I I know her deal is that her immediate reaction is defensive and a
right.
little snippy. And if we can back away from each other and give her 10 or 20 minutes and it's a legit gripe, um, more than half the time she'll be like, okay, you're freaking,
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
right. Um,
right. And it's true that we trigger these things in each other, and most of us do lead fairly unexamined lives, and we're not sure of what's triggering us or why. And so, talk therapy is one way to do it. There's other ways. I go to a program called Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families, and what they're doing is trying to get you to not only remember what happened to you as a child, but to feel the feelings and to then reparent that child so that when you have those feelings, you can be loving and supportive and comforting to those. And I also had a good insight. Again, I'm not thinking that I'm unself-reflective, but there's a chapter on PTSD, and I thought, yeah, my older brother, he really has it bad, and I was in denial about my own. The trauma that I experienced was very real. And my defense mechanisms are really survival mechanisms that these tendencies came to light as an adult. Not, as a child, you're not examining your own thinking and doing any soul searching or that kind of thing. So as a child, you don't have the responsibility, but you do as an adult to
so
take a look at yourself.
I don't think I have PTSD. I think my wife has a whiff of it due to some stuff that happened as she was growing up. And um, it doesn't shape her every moment.
No,
I
no.
mean, somebody with serious PTSD. I mean, well, it's
Yes.
not.
Oh, again, it's a spectrum. Yeah. You
But
see some of these
but
Vietnam
I
vets. Oof.
but due to the way I grew up, I engage in hyper masculine behavior.
Mhm.
So Not that you know looking at me now, because I'm a skinny old man at this point. With
No, but you are eye candy.
well, I mean, not at this point, but I'm going to get one of those red light caps that's supposed to make your hair thicker. I found one for $25 on eBay, so we'll try that. You know,
But the masculinity, is that why you have a beard, do you think?
well, I don't have any chin, really. I've got a very, I don't have a strong chin.
Yeah,
and
neither
when I was
do
in
I.
high school, I found a plastic surgeon. It's really simple surgery. They grab your lip, they slice it here, they stick a wad of plastic, chin-shaped wad of plastic in here, they sew it up. Back then, it was $300 surgery. You know, it was, but then my mom found out about it and threatened the plastic surgeon, said that she would not be his, because this is a little town there, and she'd stop being his friend if he gave me a chin. And so I was denied the chin, and so I had to grow a hair chin. But like this whole debate about trans and stuff is, I find, annoying and ridiculous. And also, when conservatives bring up trans stuff, you should check your pockets, because they're stealing your wallet. They're going, "Oh, look at this, this person who was born a man, and now they say they're a woman." And while you're distracted, they're taking away your Social Security, your Medicare. It's a goofy. It's not goofy for the people with trans issues, but it's a non-central issue to most people that the Republicans like to push out there to distract you from the horrible crap they're doing. But anyway, I find it super annoying in that I and like the guys who drive pickup trucks, especially the ones who have truck nuts, you can buy plastic testicles to dangle from your back bumper. We're as much in masculine drag. I took steroids when I was a kid. I lift weights a ton. In the Rambo era, I took a razor blade and I gave myself a bunch of like scars. I even won a Rambo look-alike contest with way back then. And that's all, gender conforming behavior. And it's at least as extreme in my case, or has been from time, as some trans people's.
Well, think about the time that Freud lived in turn of the 19th century, Vienna, when men had beards and hats that accentuated their heights, and women had bustiers, and I forget what they called it.
Bustles and back.
Bustles, yes. So that even if they're far away at the end of the street, you knew a man from a woman, and so they were accentuating those characteristics. So that's been with us for some time.
It's been with us for a million years, because most primates do it doggy style, I believe, right?
I don't know, but
I think so. I think there are maybe bonobos do it face to face, but I think most primates, and certainly most animals, do it animal style, where the eye candy is the butt. That's the focus, because for the guy, you're on top of your partner, and evolution found the butt so important for sexual arousal, that when humans started doing it face to face, they had women grow a front butt right here. Most
I have never thought of it that way.
Boobs are just a front butt, so you have something to look at to keep you horny while you're doing it face to face.
That's fascinating. And the other thing is like, I used to think, why are men checking out women's butts? And I thought the primitive aspect of it was they were assessing, not consciously, but they were assessing childbearing characteristics,
reproductive fitness. Are they going to be able to get pregnant? And once they get pregnant, are they going to be able to bring a child to term and be healthy enough to take care of it? So
exactly,
rosy red lips, like good blood circulation, big fat butt means they've got enough they're not going to starve. They've got a bouncy butt. There's so much health information in a butt that
Okay, and I'm on this private chat group. It's a sports team that we chat amongst ourselves, and the focus of all the other guys seems to be like ultimate fighting, the sport that we're which is basketball, but also women's butts comes up all the time, and I just have been puzzled by the fascination, and it's like the bigger the better, kind of.
Well, it's different from when we were young, where we grew up in the Charlie's Angels era, which was dominated by jogging. America was super skinny back then, from jogging and in some cases from doing a ton of cocaine. And the women were skinny. They had no asses, especially the blonde women on Charlie's Angels. And so skinny, nobody had to wear the women on Charlie's Angels didn't have to wear bras. It was crazy how much no bra entertainment was on network TV in the late 70s.
Very interesting observation, because I know that in my dorm, pictures of Farrah Fawcett were everywhere.
Right.
She was like the ideal, and I don't think Bo Derek, who was the 10, had had an insane.
Bo Derek had no butt. I mean, Farrah Fawcett had a butt, but Bo Derek no butt. She was super skinny. Nobody minded. But I feel like we've shifted away from blonde culture to a more ethnically mixed culture, which includes big butts. And I have a terrible theory that I shouldn't even say it, but I will because I'm obnoxious. That when you have little white peepees on, like our president is said to have, a tiny mushroom-shaped appendage. I feel like little white peepees may be intimidated by a big butt, because how are you going to even get that little thing past the butt?
Okay. And I remember Queen Latifah once saying, to a friend, I think this was a commercial or something, "Does this dress make my butt look big?" And the friend says, "Yes." Like that was the whole goal.
I mean, every era has body parts that are emphasized.
Right.
The people our age know about, like, it was 50, 80 years before us, but about the well-turned ankle.
Yes.
That in the 1890s, say, even dresses went to the ground. And if you
Frank Sinatra once said about Nancy Reagan, she had fat ankles, so he wasn't attracted to her.
But in 1892, if a breeze caught somebody's skirts and you could see your ankle, and they were shapely ankles, that was hotcha.
That was, and even in Frank Sinatra's day, women's dresses were longer, and so a shape the ankle would turn men's heads.
And even now we talk about cankles, and even Trump's cankles became an issue last week, where somebody took a picture. He's got very swollen ankles, which is chronic venous insufficiency. There's health information in the size of your ankles, and Trump needs to wear support stockings. I don't know if he will, but I've been wearing support stockings for 55 years because I've got chronic congenital varicose veins, and I need to, if I don't, my ankles turn into cankles.
All
which
right.
I'm not trying to attract a mate with my ankles. I'm just trying not to die from a blood clot.
Right. And so there are a variety of things, and of course we're not giving any medical advice on the show, but the edema that can happen, the swelling of joints and that sort of stuff, can have a variety of medical causes. And you seem to be on top of the one that's affecting you.
Yeah, and I will give medical advice. One thing is floss your teeth. You're poisoning yourself if you don't floss, because your dirty old gums are flooding your body with germs and inflammation. And when you lie down, see if you can elevate your legs. I built a little thing
I
under
agree
our
with that.
mattress so that
Yeah.
the foot end of my mattress is 1.5 inches, 2 inches higher than the head end, so it empties out my legs while I sleep. I don't notice the tilt because it's not very much. And I wear 3 socks because of my varicose veins. I got a regular sock, and then underneath I've got 2 pressure socks. And I'd say most people 60 and over should probably be wearing a tight ass sock to the knee to help their body return the blood from their lower legs, especially if you have a sitting or standing job. And I don't know, I mean, who has a laying down job?
Right. And I won't answer that, but I also put a plug in for chair yoga. It's just also leg thrusts and leg raises and that sort of thing to keep the blood flowing. And this is one of the
And
things that
like
yoga is
we've
talking.
heard that like sitting is the new smoking, that sitting for 6, 8 hours a day is supposed to be as bad as being a smoker. And I don't know, but if you have an Apple Watch, it'll tell you to get up and walk around every 40 minutes or so.
Yes. And, and stay hydrated. Hydration is something that I didn't used to pay attention to.
Well, let's come back around to tips for a second, because you want to be generous. You want to share. I mean, my feeling is if you are going out to dinner and you can't afford to leave a decent tip, not a crazy tip, but just a reasonable one, then you can't afford to be going out to dinner, or pick a place that is less expensive. But that's a weird thing too, because why are you tipping somebody who serves you a $25 meal half as much as somebody who serves you a $50 meal? It doesn't seem fair. And then the idea that we have all these issues, like LA's a pretty big restaurant town. Sure. And this happens a lot, where minimum wage for tipped employees can be as low as $2 an hour or $1.50 an hour in some states.
They're assuming that they make their living off of
that. And that sucks if you're working in a place that's poor and slow, and and there should sometimes restaurants are passing on their costs to the customer, their wage issues to customers in a sneaky way. And it doesn't.
Yes. It reminds me of tariffs, which is a sneaky way of taxing people.
Yeah, some people are saying that we should quit talking about tariffs and start calling them what they are, which is taxes on imported goods.
Absolutely, they are. That's exactly what they are. And either the company absorbs the cost, which means they're more likely to contract rather than expand, which means affects jobs. And we're starting to see the reports of the jobs being affected, or they'll pass it on to the consumer. So it's inflationary. So they're a terrible idea.
Now, I've noticed car companies in their ads are saying same price as before tariffs, or something to that effect.
Right.
And they'll do that. They'll suck up, the Canadian tariffs, I think, add about $1,400 to the price of a $50,000 pickup truck built in an American truck, but it's got enough Canadian stuff in it to move their trucks, car companies will suck it up, but only for a while. They'll say, come in, well, we still have pre-tariff pricing. And how long does that last? 4 months, 6 months? Eventually, the companies are going to be like, all right, now we got to start passing it on because our profit margins are getting creamed.
Right. It's a foolish thing. I think all economics people understand that. And Trump has got the idea that it's a way to lower the national debt, increase revenue for the government without being called a tax. People hate taxes. But if you call it a tariff, it seems like the punitive action is against another country.
But it is a tax on America. So
it's Americans that are paying the price.
Last month, I just looked it up. The U.S. made $29 billion in tariff revenue, and so far this year, the U.S. has made, the Treasury, the government has taken in these 152 billion. But if you look at the people have calculated, Yale and a couple other places have calculated that tariffs will add $2,000 to $2,400 per year per U.S. household in costs for buying the stuff you need.
Purely inflationary. Yes.
And if you do the math, it's a pretty close fit that the 100 million U.S. households times $2,000 is what, $200 billion, and the U.S. has brought in so far this year 152 billion. So, okay, so the U.S. has, and so it looks pretty much like a tax where we're spending more so the U.S. can bring in more, and at a fairly even, level. Nobody's saving money. We're just,
yeah. And these, especially, it makes me smile when he agrees to a 15% tax with the country both ways. So what's the difference between 15% each way and 0%? It's because the 15% is going to the government.
yeah.
If it was 0%, the government wouldn't get a dime. So if people understood this, they would understand that they're being taxed. And it's sort of like the moment when George Bush said no new taxes, and then he raised taxes. Well, if he had just applied tariffs, he would have accomplished the same.
Yeah, and this gets back to tips. Like, would people prefer to have the price of their meals be 20% higher and not tip, so that the 20% goes to the employees, so they don't have to live off of tips? But what happens, what restaurants have been caught doing in LA is they say, well, there's an 18% service charge.
Right.
And then sometimes the waiter will come over to you and say, yeah, that we don't get any of that 18%. That goes to management.
Unbelievable.
So
I mean, I totally believe it, but it's just what they'll do to make an extra buck.
Well, on the other hand, that 18% might be the difference between that restaurant staying in business or not.
Correct. Employing anybody. Yeah, so it is more complicated than that, but that is conning. That's fraud. So I can't get behind that. So the other thing, I remember, this is ages ago, John Carroll used to be a writer that I enjoyed a great deal for the San Francisco Chronicle. And he was writing in the Herb Caen era, and Herb Caen is probably the most famous columnist. But John Carroll was a very good one as well. And he said it was a Christmas season, and he said, instead of giving $1 to a homeless person, go to the ATM and give out $20 until you run out. And so I did that one year, and one guy was like, "Oh no, I'm good." And I gave him the $20, and I said, "Look, it's not going to change your life, and it's not going to change mine." And he smiled and he took it. And so, this type of thing is like, could I afford to do that? Not every day, but once in a great while, certainly. And a lot of people don't think you should give any money to the homeless. I just think of like what it makes the interaction between the person that you're giving money to, whether it's a tip or just a handout, and they're receiving it. It's an interaction that makes me feel like I'm trying to do good. Not that that particular action is any good, because it doesn't change that person's life at all. But just for a brief moment, they feel like hope, a little possibility.
Well, also, like, it makes the person feel, we've got a ton of people asking for money at freeway off ramps in LA.
Oh yeah.
Really. And most of the time I don't even have singles in my wallet, and I'm too
Yeah.
cheap to hand out fives, though I
And
shouldn't be. But
it's
like
not a it's not a
if I
cash
don't,
culture anymore. Yeah. It's not a cash culture anymore. We
no,
don't have
no,
a
but
cash
if
culture.
I do have singles, I can make eye contact with the person, I can give them a buck. If I don't, I feel kind of like, do I make eye contact or not? Sometimes I'll wave, like I see you, you exist. I'm not giving
Yeah.
you any money. Does that make a? I mean, I don't know how. Like in some, and every person who's at an off ramp is different. Some people are, you know, like the human contact. Some people are suffering from, or just like, or like fu, like, I mean, that's the trouble with homeless people, is that every homeless person is an individual person,
Absolutely. It's
and
a spectrum.
you can't, like, there's no like huge fix for homeless people in general.
I think the spectrum is my word for the day, but I do think that affordable housing is another issue that we could take up one day. No one's asked a question about that, but it's certainly one of the problems that we have in our society now. I don't know how people get started. Um, and when I was growing up, I had to sweat rent. It wasn't easy, but now the rent is much higher than it was
Yeah,
when I
because
started out.
California is a state where there are a ton of rich people, a lot of successful people in California, which draw, when you've got a bunch of people who can afford to chase, like in up where you're at, the real estate is crazy. And
Yeah, it's really gotten out of control. I thought when we bought this house back in the mid '90s, I thought they had added an extra zero by mistake.
yeah,
But they
yeah,
hadn't. And I was told by a friend of mine, he said, you're crazy to pay that much. And then 5 years later, he was saying that was a great investment.
and the California has been really bad at figuring out how to cheaply house homeless people.
Yeah,
Where we do, the state and the city will buy old hotels and turn them into SROs, single room occupancy, or whatever that's, and get people off the street, or build little houses, 8 by 10 foot sheds
yeah.
in
Why
little,
not small homes? Right.
yeah, these tiny homes. They don't have bathrooms, they don't have plumbing. But you've got a place to live, and then you walk like 50 feet to where there's a communal shower, bathroom, sink
Right.
set up. But the deal is that the state hasn't figured out how to do that for less than $80,000 a person.
Yeah, I think it's a question of willpower. There's not enough people that are thinking that it's worth it to do it, and there's not enough people who think that they think of it as charity, as a socialism kind of is the buzzword that goes on. But really, what it is providing dignity to human beings.
It's also cheaper. It's not charity, because spending 80 grand to take somebody off the street is cheaper than having them on the street and ending up in the emergency room every 2.5 months, or having other issues, needing other social services. And they've done a ton of studies, and a homeless person on average, I don't know, costs well over 100 grand in social services that they're not paying every year.
Right. No, this is another thing where, to be compassionate to our fellow human beings in the long run pays off. And we don't see the immediate effects. And so we're capable of denying that and thinking that and everybody should take care of themselves. And nobody gave me a handout, and that sort of attitude. But that's really archaic. That's part of the hyper masculinity that you mentioned
Yeah.
earlier. It's like the Hemingway novels and John Wayne movies that I grew up with. What it means to be a man. You know, and if you have an emotion, get drunk, because having a hangover is better than having an emotion. So these guys, and I don't need any help. I'm going to do this by myself.
Except that the people of John Wayne's generation are actually a lot more generous than the people of our generation, in that part of the masculinity thing was you would go off to war and you'd have a 10% chance of coming back dead. And so, well, actually, the U.S. has been really lucky in war. World War II, we lost a ton of people. 410,000 people, men mostly, died in battle. But Russia lost 10 million.
Right.
Germany lost, France, everybody lost millions. We're lucky to be more geographically isolated. We came into the war 2 years after a lot of countries, but that's still, I think 4 million Americans went off to war and 400,000 didn't come back. I can't imagine Americans making that kind of sacrifice now. Right. And I hope we don't have to, but anyway.
And I also think that generation also did community service. Like my father-in-law did a food bank, and that was just, a normal thing for him to do. It wasn't a special thing. And, and so they would take care of people in a way that made them feel it was a community-based kind of. Like they didn't want to give money to the government, but they wanted to take care of people.
Well, you knew your neighbors, you knew the people in your town, from church.
Yeah.
From my dad was a small business. I talk about him a lot. Both my dad and my stepdad, small business people, and talking to people face to face, friends, customers, all day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it kept them from going crazy, because if you talk to people face to face, instead of on your freaking phone where you're being flooded with bullshit, you'll be more rooted in reality. To get back to homeless for 1 sec, the solutions in the future are both maybe awesome and also super creepy, because I feel like 20 years from now, everybody's going to have something like a little Jiminy Cricket. It might be in your phone. It might be riding your shoulder. And it's going to be like whispering in your ear what the thing to do at any point in your day might be. It's just a little advisor. And
like tip $1.50 instead of $1. Yeah, I get it.
But like a homeless person who needs more guidance might have a little freaking robot friend who's helping them navigate the day. And if they're crazy, they beat the crap out of their little robot friend, and maybe a week later they get another one, and it's still cheaper to have this person somewhat, contained or advised by, the future tech than it is to just have them be a free range homeless person.
That you're making great points about the homeless, and also I think about the community. Our parents' generation had a sense of community. Not everybody, of course. Again, it's the spectrum, but most people had the experience of a community, and you had shows on TV like Leave It to Beaver, where everybody knew everybody else, and Ozzie and Harriet, and these types of things, and the nuclear family, and all of this kind of stuff. But there was this communal sense, and with the advance of technology, so that we can just. There was this movie Clueless where people were talking to each other on their cell phones in the school, and then they met up and they started walking together, but still talking on their phones to each other. And it was a forerunner of the future.
Well, there's a thing called the Gen Z blank stare, where some people blame it on COVID. Some people blame it on just people being more comfortable. Nobody likes talking on phones anymore.
Texting.
Well, no, texting is okay, but nobody likes using their voice. Everybody kind of dreads a phone call. And Gen Z is particularly annoyed by having to do oral communication. And I see it at the gym. It's like, I've been going to the gym for freaking forever. But now if you walk up to somebody and ask them, how many more sets do you have? They're much more annoyed than they used to be.
Right.
And sometimes you don't even get a verbal reply. You get like the last time I asked somebody, they looked at me and they were a little surprised, and then they did like figured out what to do, and they just held up this. It's like meaning 2 sets. It's like okay, like
Yeah.
but it's what we have to negotiate. It's we're partners with our tech, and it influences our behavior. And it took us like 10 years to learn how to use our cell phones without being dicks about it. And of course, we're still half dicks about it, but everybody, people of a certain age at least remember, the first big bricky cell phones,
Yeah.
and people in
What's
line.
going on? Yeah.
And people in line at the bank just talking at full volume, blah, 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 and everybody else in the line being like, F you.
Yeah.
Now, of course, we don't even stand in line at the bank. There's no.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Rick, I'm going to wrap up the show.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your contribution. Thank you to the listener who asked the question about tipping. And I must say that I didn't expect that question. But whatever question you have, please send it to us at info@airu.tv. And Rick will read it, I hope, and we'll talk about it. So thanks again, Rick.
Surely.
I will see you in the near future, I hope.
All right. Yeah. Next week when I'm COVID free.
COVID free. Okay, that was Rick Rosner, Emmy Award nominated Rick Rosner. And I'm James Eade. And this has been Eade IT. The show is called Eade IT, and you can see it on the website airu.tv. And you can see previous episodes, previous seasons of other shows that we've done. And Rick is a prominent feature of most of those shows as well. So please visit airu.tv or write to us at info@airu.tv. And in the meantime, I hope you have a very pleasant day.